Welcome back to Slashback Cinema, the podcast that rewinds to the best of 70s and 80s horror. I'm Shawnee.
And I'm Ryan. This week we're diving into Dario Argento's Suspiria from 1977, a visually striking, surreal horror film that's less about narrative and more about mood, color, and the atmosphere.
It's got witches, maggots, stained glass, and more primary colors than a crayon factory meltdown. But does Suspiria still cast its spell, or is it just one long, beautifully lit nightmare?
Let's step inside and find out. Well,
Go.
Shadi,
Yes.
so we've gone down this rabbit hole. I feel like we're stepping down the staircase of these campiness to the point of we landed in the swamp last week with Swamp Thing and Silver Bullet the week after that. And wow, so Suspiria. Talk to me about why you recommended this one.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're getting at. Is I felt like our movies were getting campier and campier, and they were fun, but I really like counter programming. Like, what's something really different than Silver Bullet and Swamp Thing? And this movie, I knew nothing about this movie except for the fact that it was considered one of the great classic horror movies, and it's super scary. And I would see tiny, tiny clips of it, or even stills, and it looked just terrifying to the point where, like, I've known about this movie for years, but I'd say I was nervous about watching it because I didn't know how traumatizing and horrible it would be. But then as I watched it, I like really got into it. I was like surprised how much I liked it. But I will say this about the movie. I started watching it late at night, and the first couple of minutes I found so creepy and disorienting that I thought, you know what, this is more of a daytime horror movie. So I switched and watched it in the morning where I felt it was more palpable and I was less likely to watch it, go to bed, and be traumatized in my sleep. What about you? What did you know about this?
Well, I thought I had heard of this movie, but I realized I was crossing my wires and there was another Italian horror film called Phantasm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so my lack of depth of Italian horror knowledge was coming through when I started watching this, and I was like, this is not the movie I thought it was. Yeah.
And this movie, you should watch it on the biggest screen you can, I think, because the visuals, like we were saying in the intro, are a big part of the appeal of this movie. And when people like refer to it, they refer to a lot about how like visually creative and odd it is. And I definitely found that to be the case. After I watched it, this is one of the few movies we've watched where I went back to look at specific scenes over again just to
I
see
did too. Yeah.
like, but when the movie was over, I was like, did I remember all that correctly? Like, I just finished it, but some of it feels kind of like a dream or like your imagination. And I'm like, wait, let me go back and see if I saw what I thought I saw, or if the movie just kind of suggested something. Like, what is actually showed on screen?
It definitely had that surreal quality.
So, you want to do a plot summary of this thing?
Susie Bannon is this American student who's gone to Germany to perfect her ballet skills, and she's arrives at this dance academy. It's pouring rain. It's nighttime. This woman runs out of the academy right as she gets there, and later you realize that this woman has been killed. So there's this kind of cast over her arrival at this school, and things feel a little bit off. A series of events starts happening. She feels ill. She's being fed this special diet, and things keep getting stranger and stranger. And more deaths occur, and she's trying to unravel the mystery of what's going on with her, what's going on with the school, and then the movie goes from there. I guess, I mean, do I want to give it away that it's a witch's coven? Like, should I be talking about that?
I mean, what
in
is
the
this
intro?
movie? 40? Yeah, it's 40 years old at this point, so I feel like at this point, people had a shot if they wanted to see it. Also, I don't feel like spoiling the fact that it's a witch's coven like ruins anything about the plot of the movie. This is not, in my opinion, it's not the kind of movie where like the plot is the most important thing about it. To me, it's more like the visuals and the sound are like actually what makes this movie good. There was also a modern movie, Suspiria, that was inspired by this movie. Did you read anything about that one?
A little bit, and I watched the trailer for it, which it's got a really impressive cast, and I don't think it's as well reviewed as this movie, the original was, but it looks interesting, and it's a interesting take on the original film, so it'd be worth watching. Did you see that one or know anything about it?
Boy, watching this really makes me want to watch the new one, which is not technically like a remake or something like that, but it's more like inspired by or an homage to. But I read that it goes in a lot of different directions, and also that there's controversy. The people that like the 1977 one really hate the modern one, and vice versa. People that like the modern one don't like the 77 one. So yeah, there's a lot of controversy. A lot of people feel strongly about this movie, and I can see why. It's very odd. Part of what I found really satisfying about watching the original was it seemed to me this movie was influencing a lot of other movies. Like, I really like the movie Black Swan, which is another movie that is about ballerinas, ballet dancers in a dance school. And there's kind of, it's a horror kind of concept with Natalie Portman. And I like that movie, but I didn't know anything about Suspiria. And if you see Suspiria, you'll see how it's influencing other movies. I also thought I couldn't find anything about this online, but it seemed to influence Nightmare on Elm Street because a lot of the sequences just feel kind of dreamlike, and so you're not quite clear what's happening. And the music sounds a little bit Nightmare on Elm Street. I could never find anything that confirmed that. Watching Suspiria made me feel like I was watching the origin of a lot of other horror movies that came out later in the 70s and 80s.
Absolutely. And I would like to rewind us back and the listeners back to our second episode on Slashback Cinema, which was Pumpkinhead.
Hmm.
And there was a scene in that movie, which after watching Suspiria, I was like, oh, this is where that scene came from,
What
which
is
is
it?
the scene where we absolutely lost our minds
Oh,
when
yes.
Pumpkinhead
I
was
know what you're going to say.
smashing the woman's head against the window. Well, that happens in this movie, and
Yes.
clearly this is where that came from. Although it's not nearly as funny in this film, but
Right. I totally forgot about that until you started talking about it now. Yes, I also immediately thought of our Pumpkinhead conversation and how amused we were. Because in Pumpkinhead, as the girl's head was sliding against the glass, it almost looked like he was doing a window washing, and you could
right,
almost
it
hear
was
the
like cleaning the window.
yes.
One of the things in my notes list for this film was, and it showed up in Don't Open Till Christmas. It shows up here in this movie, and I'm going to call it the European stabbing technique. And maybe this was popular in the 70s or 80s, but instead of like American style, like slash stabbing action, it's like this little poking move. It's like
Yeah,
boink,
boink.
boink, boink. And in the
Yeah.
first scene, it happens over and over again. It's very polite.
Yes.
It's very dainty. Those Europeans very reserved in the way they would you know, stab these women
Yeah.
to death.
It looks like the killers are taking a sip of tea between each poke.
Exactly.
They seem incredibly reserved and almost apologetic about stabbing
What,
these
can I get a
girls to
little
death.
sugar in my tea? Spotted milk. Ugh.
I had read something that said that movies like Suspiria inspired the slasher craze of the 80s, but I feel like in the slasher movies like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, it's all about like the blade, going into the hilt. It's like
Right.
as
They're
much.
winding up.
Yeah.
It's over their head. Yeah.
The other thing about the European horror movies that is really interesting to me is the color of blood among European actresses seems very different than the color of blood in American actors. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. It's sort of it looks like it's tempera paint. Like
Yes.
it's so it does not have the viscosity or color of actual blood.
It's interesting, yes, that you went with like an artist envisioning of the color, because I was going to say Campbell's tomato soup. It has kind of an orangey color that it just looks too bright. Some people were saying that it takes them out of the movie. I don't know if it took me out of it, but I do find it less horrifying. In American movies, the blood is like super dark red.
I will say what took me out of the movie,
Mhm.
and you had flagged this when we watched Demons, is, and I guess it was done for budgetary reasons, but the frickin' dubbing in this movie is
Yeah.
just like they've spent so much time in creating these incredible visuals, and the band Goblin did the soundtrack, which is like, honestly, the soundtrack might have been one of the creepiest soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Like, it is very unsettling. But then you get to the dialogue, and reading about it, it sounds like some of these actors didn't even speak the same language. So they would like
Yeah.
kick each other under the table when it was their line. Like, there's just no human communication happening on a real level in some of these scenes, to the point of like, I feel like it really held the movie back a bit. But
That's interesting because in Demons, I really noticed it, and that was really distracting to me. In this movie, I felt less distracted. But maybe that's just because I was more into the movie and like I found it more gripping, and so I was less distracted by it.
You come back strong.
Yeah, I feel really well. I mean, it's almost as if nothing had happened. It's incredible. And all thanks to Professor Verdigast.
Verdigast? He came to look at you?
Yeah. Come in.
what do you got for favorite scenes in this one?
So one of the things about this movie is that my favorite parts of the movie were sometimes not actually what was happening, but just the way it looked or the way it sounded. I found some of the visuals so unsettling, and I'll tell you the point when I was watching last night that I thought, nope, this is a daytime movie, was the first couple of minutes when the main character, her name is Susie, she leaves a airport, she gets into a cab, it's pouring down like torrential rain, and as the taxi is driving, she looks out into the woods and she can see a girl running like for her life in the woods. And At that point in the movie, I didn't quite know what was going on. You're supposed to understand. The movie has already kind of set up the idea that that's a girl who's running away from this dance academy. I didn't quite understand what I was watching at that moment, but it was so unsettling and weird to see this girl wearing kind of a nightdress, like running for her life through trees, and she's kind of in the background. And it may not sound horrifying to describe it, but the audio in that scene was so intense. Kind of this mixture of creepy music that was mixed with this kind of like whispering in the background. There was a lot of times where you could hear kind of like women's voices whispering to each other. And I turned on subtitles, you could never make out what they were saying, but it was just super creepy and unsettling. And boy, that I was like 8 minutes into the movie and I was like, nah, I think I'll watch this tomorrow morning. The other thing I want to tip my hat to is the colors. This movie has the brightest color schemes I've ever seen in a horror movie, like intensely deep, rich blues and reds and yellows. Some of my favorite moments in the movie were just the sets. Like, again, that early scene where I didn't quite piece this together, but the girl who was running in the woods, she's the one who checks into a hotel, and that hotel has the weirdest color scheme I've ever seen in my life.
Wild. Yeah. The color and the decoration, all of it. Yeah.
I'd read a little bit about how the colors represent different things. I felt like I would need to watch it multiple times in order to kind of get the colors. Obviously, red was blood and danger, but then at some points you see the character in yellow and you see her wearing blue. And the movie really seemed to think carefully about these colors and the brightnesses of them. And it was like pretty fascinating to watch. I found multiple scenes like that, like really gripping.
The visual style, it was something to witness in this film.
Yeah.
Like it was just wild, disorienting, surreal. It reminded me multiple times, like I felt like I was watching a Kubrick film, like especially The Shining, where it's like about this like particular set and location, and in that movie was the Overlook Hotel, but here it's this dance academy. But even the scenes that weren't shot there, like you were talking about that hotel that she checks into, just like so much eye candy that like
Yes.
he took the dial from 10 to 14. He like broke it like with the saturation and the way the colors played in the film, and just really cool to watch and combine that with the soundtrack. It had a ton of style.
It's really interesting you mentioned The Shining, because I don't know if Kubrick saw this movie or was influenced by it, but that scene I was just describing where the girl walks into the hotel visually reminded me a lot of the famous scene in The Shining with the elevator doors and the blood that comes out. It just where the camera was placed, it looked really similar. I immediately thought of The Shining when I saw that scene. So that's the funny thing about this movie is you watch it going, oh, that's where Kubrick got that idea, or that's the visual that he was mapping onto. I have a couple sequences that I thought did not work for me, but do you want to do other favorites?
It kind of builds on the one you were just talking about with the woman who's run away from the academy. It's really that kind of opening murder scene where it's in that hotel that we were just talking about. The way it culminates in that stained glass window and she shatters through it and comes down, like it really sets the tone for the film and where the movie's going to go, which it's pretty intense. Like you're just like, holy crap, like here we go. I will say that scene had some problems in terms of like the logic of the connectivity of the sequences. Like she's in her hotel room, she's getting her face mashed up against the window, and then suddenly, like later after rewatching, I'm like, oh, now she's outside. Oh, and now she's on the roof. But like, the movie like doesn't connect the dots because she's on the second floor room. How did she get outside? Suddenly she's in this different space and being stabbed by the murderer, and then suddenly she's up on the roof falling through the stained glass. It was a little loose in some of the logic of the plot in places, but if you don't focus on that and just focus on kind of the visual impact and how disorienting the whole scene is, it does work. But if you start like getting a little tight and trying to pin him down on some of his plot points, there are some holes in this movie. I will say this movie got me in two places unexpectedly, and one was that scene with the blind guy whose guide dog, his German Shepherd. They did this a few times in the movie where they would show it in a way that's like zooming in on the person's face, and they cut to the scene, their face, different angle. So they would take like 5 minutes to set this whole thing up, and you're thinking, oh, there's going to be something coming from the building, or something's going to come up behind him. And then anyway, his dog takes him out, which I did not see that coming. I was like, damn, like, okay, got me there, Dario. And then in that final scene where her friend who's been murdered by the witches shows up, comes back to life in its incredibly grotesque way, I always thought that was pretty unexpected and unsettling also. So there's some moments in this film that I was like, whoa.
Yes. So something I thought was funny was the head witch, which you've never seen at any other point in this movie, is like you said, Helena Marcos. At the very end, in the last like 5 minutes of the movie, Susie, our hero, walks into the bedroom of Helena Marcos, and you still don't see Helena. So Helena Marcos she's in her bed, but it's covered up by a blanket, so you just see this kind of outline of a person. And Helena Marcos refers to herself in the third person frequently. You're coming after Helena Marcos? You think you can take down Helena Marcos? And I was watching it thinking, I have no idea who Helena Marcos is. Helena Marcos really feels strongly that this girl is not going to take her out. I have a feeling she is going to get taken out by Susie.
Step to Helena. Come on.
Yes. You think you can take on me, Helena Marcos? And I'm like, has Helena Marcos done anything in this movie to suggest?
No, she's only shown up as this like
unstoppable?
raspy snorer. Like in other scenes, she's like, so that's who she's taking on. The person who has sleep apnea.
You wanted to kill Elena Marcus.
There's something I wanted to ask you about this movie is, have you ever done like a sleepaway camp or done anything as a child that was like where you were away from your parents and living with other kids your age for a couple days or a week or longer?
Went to camp once, and then we would do these like church sleepover things back in the day, or they were called lock-ins. But it was like an overnight. It wasn't like boarding school or anything. But yeah, did you do the away camps?
No, we did like a day camp, except sometimes there would be like these sleepover events. This movie really, I thought, did a good job of capturing the anxiety of what it's like to be a kid in like a sleepaway environment where you suddenly feel this sense of anxiety because it dawns on you that your parents are not there to protect you and you don't 100% know the people who you're sleeping next to. Those were some of my favorite scenes. I thought that it really captured this kind of like hard to put your finger on anxiety. You hear whispering, you hear noises, there's weird colors and lights, there's sounds outside that aren't the sounds you're used to.
Yeah.
And my favorite scenes in the movie were scenes like that I'm like, oh, that's what that felt like to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. So I was curious if you,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever had an experience like that.
Not the experience of sleeping next to Helena Marcos, but maybe.
You want to kill Elena Marcus.
The other thing I liked about this movie is Susie starts to get weak at some point, and so they bring her food that she has to eat alone, not like in the cafeteria with the other girls. It kind of dawns on you after a while that she's basically being poisoned. That's another example of like when you're a kid and you go over someone's house or you are at a sleepaway camp, you're just relying on these other people's food. And if you don't like the food or if it's gross, or in this case, this is the most Italian thing in this movie. The doctor, because she's sick, prescribes her a glass of wine every night as part of her healthcare routine.
Yes.
Only in Italy or maybe
Molto
France.
bene. Molto bene.
Yes. Yes. But then at one point she drinks it and it's basically blood. Like it's thick.
She pours it down the sink.
Yes, it like stains the sink. That's a much darker color. And so I found that really creepy. Again, like the things in this movie I like the best are these like very suggestive moments where you're not quite clear exactly what's going on, or the movie just implies that she's being poisoned.
Should we switch to stabby scores for this one?
Absolutely. Let's get some stabbies in.
Where are you with the Italian horror? This was your suggestion.
Yeah, so I suggested it, and I gotta say, I actually liked it more than I expected to. I thought I was going to be super disturbed and upset by this movie, and the last time a movie I found really grotesque and obsessively focused on like torture, I think I gave it like a stabby score of 1. But this movie, the deaths were not super intensely realistic. I didn't feel like I was watching people in tremendous pain or suffering. It's like there's lots of scenes of people getting murdered, but I don't find them very realistic. Maybe because of how you had to do that in the 1970s. The technology wasn't that great, and the blood is all tomato soupy, so it doesn't look very bloody. But I liked the incredible colors and the super, super creepy sound, and the voice acting didn't bother me as much. So I'm saying Suspiria is a 4-stabby movie.
Nice.
What'd you think?
I was really blown away by how stylistic and atmospheric this movie was. Like we talked about the colors and the way it was shot, and it really stands apart from, I think, most everything that we've watched in terms of it just was doing its own thing. So yeah, I think what held it back was there was some honestly pretty terrible acting, and the dubbing was really bugged me even more than Demons, which Demons was so just over the top wacky that I sort of just threw it into part of the package. But I feel like that did hold this movie back, but there's so much to like about this. And so, and I agree with you. Like, I feel like some of these scenes, you're not going to forget them. I'm willing to overlook a lot of the flaws of this film, and I'm going to drop it in 4 stabs.
All right. Yes. This is the kind of movie where you could run hot or cold. Like, I could see people totally hating this movie
Yeah.
or thinking it's one of the great horror movies of all time.
I had originally gone back and forth between 3.5 and 4, but rewatching some of it again today, it's just very cool and very distinct.
Shall we play a game?
All right. So you ready for our game?
Trivia time.
I discovered that the tagline for 1977 Suspiria was, "Do you know anything about witches?" Which is not a good tagline at all. And that made me think of taglines. And one of my favorite taglines was from a movie I didn't like that much. It's a movie we reviewed. The tagline was, "If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight." Do you remember the movie we watched that was the tagline for?
Yes, Black Christmas.
Yes.
I did see that there was also a tagline for this film. The only thing more terrifying than the last 12 minutes of this film are the first 92.
Yes.
Who's writing this stuff?
Yeah, none of those were really great. It made me wonder if the taglines were losing something in the translation. Like maybe in Italian, that is really a snappy tagline. So the game we're going to play today, I've got 5 questions for you. All 5 of them are movie taglines of horror movies from the 70s, and then you're going to have to guess what movie the tagline is from.
Sounds like a good one. All right.
Question number 1. What movie had the tagline, "It will tear your soul apart"? Was it A, Hellraiser, B, Candyman, or C, The Evil Dead?
I'm just, from now on, going with my first instinct, Hellraiser.
Hellraiser is correct, yes. Question number 2 is going to be, what movie had the tagline, "The monster movie that breaks new ground"? Was it A, Godzilla, B, Anaconda, or C, Tremors?
Tremors.
Tremors was correct, yes.
Yes.
Are you just going with your first instinct every time?
Like, I feel like the more I think about these things, the worse I do.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the right way to go. Just
Yeah.
go with instinct. Number 3, I gotta say, by a long shot, this is my favorite tagline, and I couldn't believe it. What movie has the tagline, quote, "Man is the warmest place to hide"? Is it A, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, B, The Thing, or C, Species?
Damn. Well, given that I'll talk this one out. Given that The Thing takes place in Antarctica, I'm gonna go with Thing.
The Thing is correct.
Yes.
I thought that was funny because it's such a weird thing to say. Is man really? Actually, I think tauntauns are the warmest place to hide.
Well, they start out
I
by
don't know.
hiding out in the dog in that movie, so I don't know. Somebody came
Yeah.
up with that. It was in marketing.
All right, question number 4. What movie has the tagline, "Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die"? Was it A, From Dusk Till Dawn, B, The Lost Boys, or C, Fright Night?
Boy, it's either Lost Boys or Fright Night. I'm gonna go Lost Boys.
Lost Boys is correct. Well done.
All right.
Question number 5, last one. And I think you've gotten 4 out of 4 so far.
I'm on a roll.
Number 5. What movie had the tagline, "Who will survive and what will be left of them"? Was it A, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, B, Night of the Living Dead, or C, House of a Thousand Corpses?
What's the tagline again?
Who will survive and what will be left of them?
It's either Texas Chainsaw Massacre or House of a Thousand Corpses, which was a Rob Zombie movie. I'm gonna go Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is correct.
Yes!
5 out of 5. You killed it. Way to go, sir.
On fuego.
I'd be very curious to hear how listeners did on this quiz. So drop us a line at slashbackcinema.com or share quiz questions. That wraps up another trip down memory lane. Hopefully you enjoyed revisiting Suspiria as much as we did.
Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, and subscribe however you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you do love the show, leave us a review. It helps people find out about our podcast.
And we want to hear from you. If you have a favorite memory from the 70s or 80s or a classic horror movie you'd like us to dissect, drop us a line at slashbackcinema.com. Your suggestions keep the conversation alive.
Thanks for tuning in to Slashback Cinema. We'll see you next week.
Banana, 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 banana. But does Suspiria still cast a spell, or is it one long, beautifully lit nightmare? Let's step inside and find out. Oh, I read your part.
You stole my line, you bastard.
Wait, let me start over.
Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And I said this week I wrote it out. I'm like, I've got it this week. How many weeks have I read this fucking thing? God damn it.